Been
Hell yeah,
sitting here
dude.
with this spliff burning a hole in my pocket, ready to roll, ready to rumble.
Fuck yeah,
I
dude.
got a
How you
treat.
feeling today? Feeling better today?
Yeah, well, I'm using the to kind of parlay into the topic of discussion today in some way, shape, or form. But I'll keep it classy.
Mm-hmm.
Don't worry, I won't be
Mm-hmm.
all dark and sad.
Yeah.
Life is
It's okay
hard.
to be sad.
Life is hard. It's not even that. It's hard to describe. It's a physical depression, if that makes sense. Like the brain is
I know.
incapable. The
Yeah.
brain is like
Yeah.
incapable of having a positive thought, even though like
For
the
sure.
the deeper
Yeah.
part of myself the whole time was like, dude, I know this mood is bullshit, but it's like something you literally have to ride out. As much as I want to just like talk myself out of it because I'm trying in my head, it's still physically I just feel that, like I said, that depressed. Man, nothing makes sense about the world. It's all pile of dog shit. It's just
Yeah, I get
that.
that too
Yeah,
sometimes.
exactly.
I
It's just
feel it in my stomach, like
I
right
get a
around my
knot.
navel,
Same. I get a big
Yeah,
knot. It
yeah,
feels
right
like
there.
there's like a
Yeah.
tight, like something's tight. I know. I get that too. Like
Mm-hmm.
this impending doom, ominous feeling, and it hits my gut, and it's just like, what is wrong with the world of
Yeah, like
today?
an existential dread, kind
Yes,
of.
exactly.
That's
Yes, because
somewhat
nothing really even,
undefinable.
nothing even like happened yesterday. It was a normal
Yeah,
day.
nothing
So I'm saying
specific
there's
or
nothing
anything,
like sets it
you know?
off. It'll just be some
Mm-hmm.
days I just wake up kind of in it, and I have felt it like yesterday morning, like kind of building and building. Yeah, by the evening, I was just like immersed in this feeling of just dread and like fuck, and I was like,
Yeah,
what's going on?
yeah. You know what helps with that?
Yeah.
Having kids, so you don't have time to
Oh
have
God.
that feeling. I'm serious, dude.
Oh
It's
man, I
like
don't know if that's the remedy for me. Skateboarding is
when I
enough
was,
of a distraction.
yeah, when I was younger, I used to have that a lot, and now I see it with Magnus, my 8-year-old. He gets that.
8-year-old? Oh shit. I didn't start getting
Yeah,
it until I was like 17, 18. Fuck. Eight
no,
year
and
olds
I
are
got it
having it
when I,
now? God.
yeah. Well, I had it when I was his age too, and I would worry about, like, I'd think about God a lot,
Me too.
and it would freak me out,
Yeah.
And it was always on Sundays, right? And I would think about it. I'd think like, ah, there's a God. What created God? And whatever the concept of like infinity. It would like hurt the front of my brain. Like my brain would start to burn, and it just terrified me. And now he's getting that too on Sundays.
On
It's so
Sundays.
weird. Yeah, he does. He's 8. He doesn't even know what he like. The other day I was telling him about like, dude, I used to have that same feelings on Sundays, and he's like, yeah, but today's not Sunday. And I was like, yeah, it is. It's Sunday, bud.
Whoa.
It's weird, man.
So,
It's like a genetic thing. I don't know.
well,
It's
maybe think
strange.
about this though. Maybe, and to boil it down to like nuts and bolts, maybe it's because there's more, Sundays a day where all these people are out doing religious activities. And we were talking, I think, on the first episode of the
Yeah,
podcast, how people are kind of radio transmitting towers. So on a
the
Sunday is the day where
subconscious.
everyone's out doing their prayers and their hallelujahs. Well, no, I'm saying maybe the field of the collective is broadcasting super high on Sundays because that's when a lot of people are in church. It's like how we've been talking about this. The more people experiencing something, it kind of becomes a paradigm. So especially kids,
Mm-hmm.
maybe just in the local vicinity, more people are praising the Lord, and kid picks up on that, and just that energy being
Mm.
broadcast physically from people in the act of praying and worshiping
Yeah.
is hitting his receptor on a subconscious level. And same thing with like you feel for some
Yeah.
reason on that day you're getting pulled into
Huh.
these like existential godlike wrestlings with your own mind, but maybe it's being nudged by the fact that on a community wide level there's more of it happening
I
that
like
day.
that.
Maybe.
That makes
Again, this is
sense.
just me
That's
thinking.
I couldn't think of a fucking,
I said I'm trying to think of the nuts and bolts of it.
yeah, that makes
Yeah.
sense.
That's how
That
my
makes sense.
brain always tries
Yeah.
to boil it down. There's got to be some tangible, this is why I like
Mm-hmm.
sound, and a little bit of today's episode is going to be about, sound and the origins of sound for that very reason is because when you think about the source of something, it's very important. And that's kind of what that is. What is
Yeah.
the source of your son's feeling or epiphany that day or your own? And if you notice a link like
Mm.
that, oh, it always is occurring on Sundays. Well, I think that's an indicator, okay, well, you're getting closer to the source of the matter. And like a sound being broadcast, every sound needs a source. Something happens, either two things banging together, a person talking, some far off thing happening in the universe will emanate a
Black
sound.
holes.
Yeah, that can go across the universe for thousands of years. But it all required an event to create the sound. The sound represents something that happened, right?
Okay.
So, yeah. So with that, I think, I wanted to kind of start off in two places. I have, this is an interesting. Where do I go first? Well, you know, since we're talking about sound, I'm going to start with that. And I have a
Just
recording.
sound in general.
Well, again, sound in relationship to, again, the source of something. And so how our previous podcasts have
Okay.
been about, like, you know, the source of a thought even, or the source of, you know, people relating to plants, like where are these nodes firing, right? And I think a sound, you know, particularly when it comes to something obscure and abstract and trying to, like, say, understand the universe as a whole, you know, listen to its sounds. It's like the same way of, like, how you understand a person. You listen to them talk. But in essence, that's just them
Mm-hmm.
making their sound at you, right? So if you're going to listen to a faraway sound, I think it can give you some insight as to, like, what is occurring at the source
Oh.
of that thing, if that makes
Oh, so
sense.
this is like the radio astronomy
Yeah, so I'll
recordings
start
and
out with radio
stuff.
astronomy, and then I want to go back to the existential
Cool.
dread thing. So I got two things going on here, but they're both tied to sound. So the first
Again.
one here, we're going to do
Cool.
this. I'm going to share my screen, and I'm going to play a clip of an actual recording from deep space. This was recorded by a radio telescope, and I've been using it for a number of years in my music stuff. Oh, your light's flickering. Weird.
Whoa, dude.
Let's go. Let's go. Right when I talk about playing the universe
Ugh.
sound. All right. This is good. This will be perfect for you.
What?
Yeah, you ready?
Yikes.
All right, you
I
seeing
hope that
that?
doesn't keep going.
All right. Where's my Ableton? There it is. Okay. So here it is, lined up. This is what deep space sounds like. You ready for this, Jordan?
So this is cosmic background?
Yep. This is just
Whoa,
the
dude.
sound of space. Take it in.
Ah, that is intense. That sounds like birds chirping.
Listen
You
to
hear
that.
that?
Listen to that low end in the background.
Ah, man. That is loud. Okay, why is it changing though?
Hold on. It's almost through.
Oh man.
Here's a heartbeat.
Yeah, it does sound like a heartbeat. Or drums. Drums in the deep. Damn, dude. That's intense, man. Why does it change though? Wouldn't it
Because
be
it's
constant?
well, anyone's guess is as good as another. But
Because
so
there's,
basically, what
I
that
mean,
is,
yeah, that's weird.
that's the
Okay, so
recording.
let's can we
Yes.
first say like what radio astronomy is?
So they point, you know, a radio telescope at various celestial objects, and there's a whole archive recording of thousands of these various recordings from everything from planets. You know, planets actually all emit
Mm-hmm.
unique sounds. Comets, stars, various
Planets
black.
emit
Yeah, planets. Saturn
radio.
has a unique sound versus Neptune. Believe it or not, all
Okay, and
planets
so
sing
it's
in a different
just
sound.
all right, radio waves are part of the EMF. They're just longer, right? Like
Well,
on that
yeah,
spectrum, you have
yeah.
light
Radio's
and then like
broadband.
microwaves and then radio waves.
Yes, radio is very, very
Right.
broadband. That's why it can
Broadband.
exist. Like you
Yeah.
can actually pick up radio broadcasts that were broadcast on this planet 100 years ago. They're still
Because they're still bouncing around.
bouncing around. And if you're like in
Oh,
somewhere
dang.
in a mountain range, you have the right radio equipment. You can
Yeah.
pick up like
pick up, like,
legacy
Hitler.
signals. Yeah, for real. You could pick up signals that were broadcast 2 decades ago that are still bouncing around. So same thing in outer space. So
That's wild.
what that deep space, so the one we just listened to in particular is just deep space, is a deep field recording that wasn't pointed at any particular object. That's just what is emanating out of just black space. Pretty wild, right? And like I said, your mind goes to, all right,
Yeah, man.
I mean, especially that like heartbeat for me, that drum, 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 drum,
Yeah,
drum, drum.
it's
I mean,
intense, man.
there's some
It's drums
consistency
in the
to it,
deep.
and then there's like, yeah, those abstract, the chirps and the things that are fading
Yeah,
and going,
sound like birds and crickets and shit. Space
and
crickets.
so now imagine getting to the source of what the fuck is making that sound. If the sound is that bizarre, imagine
Yeah,
making that sound is,
yeah, yeah.
right?
I mean, who's the guy that discovered radio? Was it Carl something or other?
I wish I had done my homework better for this podcast
It's
on that.
I
I have
believe it
the
was
raw
Carl
sample,
Jansky
something, yeah. I honestly don't have the background like I
in the
should.
30s, and the way he discovered it, he was working for like Bell Laboratories, the Bell telephone thing, like working with aerials, like radio arrays, and he was trying to eliminate like background interference.
Mm-hmm.
He's like, oh, if there's an electrical storm over here, I'm picking that up, and then there's one over there, I'm picking that one up. But then there was a third source, and he was like, well, what's this? And he manipulated his arrays and pointed them, and found out it was coming from the center of the Milky Way, and that's the cosmic background
Yeah. So
radio waves.
where I used to work for Microsoft actually has one of the most sound neutral rooms on the planet for doing
Oh yeah,
recordings for like sound effects to get very, very detailed recordings of sounds.
silent background.
Yeah, it's this crazy room, and if you're in
Hmm.
it too long, you actually start to go insane from hearing your own circulatory system working. You start to hear your own body
Oh, it's like a
mechanics inside the
sensory
room.
deprivation
In a
thing.
way, yeah, but it's made for doing
Yeah.
really high sensitive recordings, and yeah, it's in Microsoft's campus in the recording
Dude, I'd love to
studio.
go in there and
Yeah.
just rip a fucking fart, man. I'd like reverberate around
Talk
and
about
shit.
a Dutch oven though. You'd be trapped in
Oh,
there.
yeah, it'd be
Hopefully, it's
great.
not a stinky one.
Yeah.
There goes your
See
lights
the.
again, dude. What's going on? Your
I
lights,
don't
man?
know what's. Let me. Yeah, screw it. Whatever. We'll just.
We broke your lights.
Yeah, that crazy cosmic background
I've used that, and
radio
so the
waves.
reason why I have that is I actually use those in my like soundscapes, and I add it to music. So I've done some like and well, maybe as we get down the road with our podcast, I'll sample some of that for you. But yeah, I like play piano and stuff too, and I like to use it as like background music.
That's a cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a
Yeah.
just jamming with the universe,
Jamming with the universe, right? It's the best bandmate you could
Yeah.
ask for.
Yeah, that's fun.
Yeah, yeah. So yeah, I don't know. Sounds always fascinated me in that way. I do field recordings around, in like the woods and rivers and lakes. And when I travel, I bring like mics and field recording gear to basically get just organic sound, and
Oh,
then, like I said,
cool.
mix them into music. So it's like,
Yeah.
homegrown vegetables versus store bought type thing. Cooking with my
Have
own
you ever
ingredients.
heard the sound of crickets sped up?
Yeah, actually, I've
Sure.
recorded a
Yeah.
bunch of crickets. Yeah, I have a lot of cricket
And
recordings. Yeah.
it's either speeding them up or slowing them down or something like that. But they're like, it sounds like a orchestra.
Dude, there's
Almost,
been times where I've been out recording,
cool.
and I actually in Spokane once, I was just randomly out recording. I was walking out his path, finding these crickets, and dude, yeah, I was there like 10 minutes, like crouch, like record. But this, like, taking in the sound of it was literally, it became like a meditative, like mantra, just like hyper focusing on the sound that, and then just like,
Yeah.
whoa, it really started to like take you out. I was like, holy shit, I'm like standing there on this path, like little recorder, like, whoa, dude, I don't want to like faint here or something.
Yeah, that's
like, yeah,
crazy.
really is.
Huh.
Yeah, probably the
Huh.
best one I got animal wise was in Costa Rica. I sound recorded a family of howler monkeys. That was badass,
Whoa.
dude. That was bad. I was like under this
Whoa.
tree with my mic on a pole, and there was like this like farmers right across from me looking at me like, what is this guy doing? I'm just like, shit, there's these monkeys up.
Were they howling?
Oh yeah, dude, and grunting. Dude, that recording turned out sick. Yeah.
Oh, I bet.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so what I want to do, and I still
that
haven't,
on
I
a
still
track.
haven't done this. Well, and here's you want to know the goal. TBD. I've been working on this for years. So on that same trip, I field recorded Dennis McKenna giving talks. He let me record him because I had my gear. I'm like, hey Dennis, can you mind if I record you?
Yeah.
So his talks, he was talking about how we're kind of the primate that's wrecking up the planet. And his quote, no shit, was
Oh.
the mushrooms told Dennis this. He said, "Hey, you monkeys, knock it off. You're wrecking the place." And so I want to play that Howler Monkey recording behind Dennis, and then I'm going to add music to it. And it's going to be like a music bomb. You know, you've heard those, like,
Oh yeah, that would
like a
yeah, that would
speaker,
sound
somebody
cool.
doing a prolific
Yeah, yeah,
speech to background music. I'm going to do that for Dennis's
yeah,
talk that I recorded. And when he talks about like the monkeys wrecking up the planet, I'm going to play the actual Howler Monkey, recording. So
yeah.
anyway, that's kind of nerdy sound show I like to get into. But to me, that's so much better than like
No, that's
going
fun.
online and
That's
just getting a sample of a monkey and adding it. Okay, whatever. But the fact that I
yeah.
actually
Might as well.
sat under that tree and I recorded those damn monkeys
Yeah,
myself,
might as well be something that you recorded. You
Yeah,
know.
yeah, yeah. So, I don't know, sound means a lot to me. And when I listen back to those, dude, I'm right there. Like when I listen to that recording, I can picture it in great detail. You know what I mean? Like I
Yeah.
can
Right.
listen to the stuff I recorded with Dennis. It's like, oh man, I was like sitting there listening to him all over again. So I don't know. Same thing. Like,
That's dope.
I remember the first time that really I felt that was, and you'll remember this, good old Tom Petty. What was it? I have the ticket on my wall here. 2005.
God, it's
There's the
2005.
ticket stub right there. It's to it. No
Good
joke. The
lord,
Gorge, 2005. I know we're getting old, man.
17 years
But that
ago.
was the first time because,
Yikes.
that was my first real profound psychedelic experience to like music, to live music in particular. But that was
Mm-hmm.
the first time where then after every time I heard Tom Petty, it like spawned that like emotional
Right, you
memory
remember
of
that?
but like
Yeah,
emotionally
that
the
feeling.
experience. It like took me
Yeah,
back to
yeah.
the trip of you passing out in the crowd and the whole thing and us experiencing basically like death for the first time and really getting kind of rocked on a big level. And it was all to this like music. But then
Yeah.
afterward that music always set that chain of, memories in motion and just put me right back in that
Yeah,
place.
they say that
Yeah.
like smell and sound trigger memories better than anything, you know.
Yeah. And honestly, so that was a big one too. I mean, speaking of the Dennis McKenna and the ayahuasca trip, that was what was really, profound about the experience with the shamans. Is so their Icaros are songs they pass down for thousands of years, generation to generation. They keep these songs. And that was the thing that hit me when I first heard them in the
Huh.
first session was it really hits a lot of deja vu centers. You think it's gonna be like, oh, what's this new song? This funky jungle guy's
Oh, it
gonna chant
feels
at me.
familiar.
Feels very like oddly familiar on like a deeper
Is it
universal
throat
level.
singing?
Yeah, and it's just all a cappella. They don't have any
I love that
instruments.
shit.
There's no light in the room. They take all the light away, and you're just like in the dark listening to these people's. And it's very like
Kind of prepares you for the
yeah, and you're fully
trip.
immersed in the sound is the point. The sound is like everything. And so when you hear this sound, it unlocks this like real
Hmm.
ancient deja vu to where like your internal subconscious is like, I remember this.
Oh,
I've
weird.
heard this before. And that's what it sparked. It's like when I hear Tom Petty, oh, I've heard this before in the state. It was very similar, and I remember going through that on ayahuasca.
Interesting.
I was like, whoa, this is just like with Tom Petty. When I heard it after the fact, it pulled me right back. Hearing those caros from the shamans, it was my first time hearing them, but it pulled me back to like almost a memory. And I was like,
Yeah.
whoa, like
Oh,
where
that's
have I heard this
bonkers.
before? Yeah,
They use drums and
no
or
drum.
is
Like
it
I said, just
all
all a cappella.
all
And
acapella?
it was a man and a woman, and they kind of go back and forth, sometimes together, most of the time independently.
And what's the purpose of it? Is just to prepare, get you in the right
No, the whole thing
frequency for
it is the
your
vessel,
trip?
man. It is the vessel. It's hard to describe. So when you
Yeah.
initially drink it, it takes a while to go around the circle and everyone drink, and then you sit for about 20, 30 minutes in silence
Hmm.
while it's kind of marinating, and then just out of the blue, the shaman just kind of kicks in, and as soon as that song starts, it's hard to describe. I mean, it's like you've listened to music on mushrooms and you've been, say, in like a quiet forest. You've experienced both, the sensory input versus no sensory input.
Yeah.
You know what,
Yeah.
just music can do for a psychedelic experience. So
Yeah. That's awesome.
this is like
Most
an
of the time,
ancient song that
you know.
people have been using in psychedelic ceremonies for thousands of years. And imagine that.
Oh
That's
wow.
what I mean. And it's like
That's
geared
bonkers.
to like take you to the places you need to go. And you
Yeah.
feel that. It's like somebody it's like the word Sherpa, it's like somebody comes and like, here, I'm going to show you the way up the mountain and this is the tools. Our
Right.
people have been doing this for a long time, like follow me. And that's kind of what these songs are doing of like showing you like, oh, this is an ancient art form that your culture doesn't know fucking dog shit about. But these
Yeah.
songs will just by experiencing them will show the way. You know, it
Yeah,
transcends like language in a lot of ways. It's purely an
it's interesting.
experiential. Yeah.
It's interesting that they use song and sound to
Right.
for that
Mm-hmm.
purpose, you know.
So I'm saying it's
And
that
I
powerful.
think we talked about it a little bit on the consciousness episode, but just how subjective sound, you know, they don't know why music sounds good to humans, you know.
Right.
It's totally subjective
Yeah.
and you know, according to scientists, everything has to be natural selection, right? Like Darwinianism. But what the fuck's the purpose of music? How does that benefit
Well,
people?
and some
We
of
just like it.
the first
Why do we like it?
languages were literally music. Like ancient
Yeah.
tribes, that was how they cross communicated was through drumming initially when
Hmm.
they didn't have, you know, ways to
Well,
understand
what
each other's
benefit,
languages.
like what survival benefit is knowing how to play the drums, you know?
Other than it can literally, it's a vessel for a feeling that you can pass along. You know what I mean? It's the same thing as like typing an email and sending it. It literally transcribes your internal experience, just like talking at each other is now, or,
Hmm.
you know, any other thing, or a political speech,
And
or, you know, it's a way to take your idea and to put it into somebody else's receptors.
or mood or emotion or feeling, you
Yeah.
know, but like why do some sounds sound bad also, you know?
Because I think all sounds represent, and this is kind of almost like the chicken or the egg conundrum. You know, does the emotion represent the sound, or is the sound representing the emotion? You know, what comes first? You know what I
Yeah, I
mean? Does
don't
the
think
sound
either of
make
them
you
come
feel that
first
way?
necessarily,
Right. Does the
you
sound
know?
make you feel that way, or does you saying the things the way you saying them, you know, through the sound, create it? You know, I don't know. Like,
That's kind of like so I've been watching that Lord of the Rings show, you know, and like
there's a Lord of the Rings
the Tol
show now. I had no
yeah,
idea.
yeah, yeah, it's on Amazon. It's really good. But like that whole
A
token
plug for
Tolkien
Amazon.
yeah, unfortunately, but hey, you know, come on. It's Lord of the Rings, dude. It's
We'll
great.
get it. We'll get our dividend in the mail for this.
But
I better.
his whole thing for his universe, you know, is like God sang it into existence like it was a song, you know.
Hmm.
And then the one like whatever devil figure like just was a little off pitch, you know, like he kind of sounded like shit, and then that's what created like the imbalance, the evil, you know. That
Yeah.
just reminded me of that.
Oh, okay. Well, that's interesting because there's actually a Zen proverb that, you know, yeah, existence is a song that sings itself into being.
Oh man,
Yeah.
yeah, I gotta
That's a Zen quote, man. Straight up.
marinate on that one.
Yeah.
That's deep.
That is.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What
Right.
is the that cosmic background sound? What does that invoke in you? How do you feel when you hear that?
um. You
'Cause
know,
for me, it was a pretty wide range of shit.
yeah.
You
Right.
know?
Yeah. Well, for me, what it indicates, bar none, is that the universe is like a living, breathing mechanism all around. You know what I mean? If that's just emanating
Yeah.
out of nothingness, then that means there's no set. You know, nothingness is probably the biggest illusion. You know what I mean? Like the
Oh,
concept of
right.
like dead space, or that, you know, we're in a dead, meaningless universe. Nothing's going on. I think to me those sounds represent like clearly there's like, I almost think of it like, you know. And here's another little insight from my experience in Costa Rica. After one of the sessions, I was out standing under the stars, and I had actually smuggled some cannabis into the country, which wasn't hard. Turns out.
Oh, Jesus. Did you keister it? How'd you get
No,
it in
I
there?
literally just put it in my bag and checked it. I put it a sock over the jar, but that was about
Whoa.
it. Yeah, I know. I was surprised when I got there and opened it. And I was
You
like,
put it in
I
a
put it in a
sock.
sock and just put it in my bag and was like,
How
"Good
could
luck."
the dogs not have
I don't
smelled
think
it?
they'd
You
care.
know?
I mean,
They're
it
like,
was
oh, it's in a sock.
some chronic, so I don't know.
He's good.
But after everyone left after
That's
the
funny.
ceremony, I hung out and smoked some weed and kicked it under the stars, and it was interesting because
Yeah.
when I was looking up at it, basically I seen that dead space, you know, that we think of as like black space in between the
Mhm.
stars. In that moment, it showed to me, it was like, oh, that's all an illusion. What you're really seeing is that black space is just this like veil over a awesome glowing light of basically like the other dimension. And if it were to be removed
Whoa.
and all you saw was that glowing light that's back there, you would absorb into the other dimension, right? And what it showed me was, in fact, the stars aren't places; they're just little pinhole pricks in that veil. Like if you were shining a light behind a black piece of
Whoa.
construction paper and poked holes through
Yeah.
it, It was like, think of the stars as that. It's just a little bleeding of light from the other dimension. But if we were to remove the
Yeah, that's
veil and
cool.
showed you what was back there, it's just this awesome light that would literally, like
Be
sliders,
everywhere.
pull you the fuck out. Well, because in that
That's
experience,
interesting.
I mean, I left
Huh.
definitely the room and I went other places, and I remember I took very seriously, like, yeah, like, I don't know, kind of the multiverse theory of like, you can consciously, with your consciousness and without your physical body, end up in other places. It's the same thing as lucid dreams and all that. And I guess in my experience there, I became pretty convinced that they are places. You know what I mean? And the catch 22 to
Yes.
the catch 22 that it showed me is to understand another dimension, to understand another universe, is to literally be in it. And that's why you're not in one or
Yeah.
even understanding the next one. And so that darkness you see in space is really your lack of understanding the other dimension. It's like your mind just makes it black. But if you were to
Yeah, I've heard
understand the
that
other dimension, it would,
theory
and you would just
before.
fucking be out.
You'd be there. Yeah, I've
Yeah.
heard that before. That,
Yeah.
that like the universe is full of life. It's just on. It's not like in this material like density that we
Right.
are.
And
It
so we're in
could
like an
be.
incubator. We're being
You
protected with
know.
this veil of kind of like, and it lets in, like I said, little bleeding
Yeah.
amounts of it. And that's why we're so attracted to the stars. I'm like, oh, what are they? It's just little indicators that there's something behind that blackness.
That's dope.
Yeah, it was
That
interesting.
would
But
be
I'll admit,
cool.
I remember that moment though. It was one of those things like in the moment, it just
It
felt
sounds like a
very,
myth.
very logical when I stand there looking at it. I'd never seen the night sky like that
Yeah.
before. I'd never even thought about it. And the other thing that tripped me out at that moment, it looked really
Huh.
close. It was like, that's what it was showing me. It was like, it's just a hologram. It was like, it literally looked like it was like,
Yeah.
feet from my face. It was like, what the fuck? Could have just been the,
Yeah.
the jungle, the
Interesting.
jungle juice and the weed, but I just,
Yeah, maybe, but I don't
maybe.
know. That
Yeah,
sounds like
right.
a
So it's one of
that
those
sounds like
spooky
an old
logics.
myth or
Yeah,
something. Like an
totally.
indigenous culture's like, oh, it's actually just this veil, and
Yeah.
those are the light shining through
Yeah, somebody
the
poked holes, some ancient,
poked holes in it. Yeah, the
some
ancient
ancient,
turtle
what? Yeah,
went up there and poked
poke
the
holes,
holes.
so we would all have some
And it
remembrance of the
came.
other world. It keeps us going. We're at the night sky. We're like, because here's the thing:
Yeah,
nobody can validate it one way or another, because nobody can get there, go there, and so in reality, everyone's experience of it is just that. We're standing there looking up at a black thing with shining, glowing objects in it. That's the reality for
yeah,
everyone. The story that people have come
yeah.
up with for thousands of years are just that. It's everyone's story. They're layering on top of like what the fuck it is to stand there and look at this black thing with glowing dots in it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And every culture's come up with their way to describe it to
Uh,
themselves.
yeah, it reminds me of that scene in Lion King, where he's like, each of them is like the old kings or whatever, and then like
Yeah.
Puma's like, I always thought they were giant swirling balls of plasma and gas. He's like, what? No, no way, dude.
And it's funny when you think about even that though, that I mean that is in its own right pretty absurd, to think like that's
Oh
all that
man,
it
I
is. You know
I
what I
went
mean?
down a
Like
rabbit hole with
yeah, like I mean, who came
um,
up with that? Like, who says that it's
who
logical to
came up with
assume
the
it's just a
big
fiery ball of plasma? I mean, and plus, none of those guys have like gone there and like drilled into it, and be like, "Yep, that's what's there." They're
Yeah,
just making us all
right.
take their word for it. Like, dude, totally, I know, I just
I
fucking
mean, I
know.
don't know. There's like math that is so, but the
There's
way that I think
math.
about it is like it's if
Oh,
it's like a
math.
collective consensus algorithm, or like
Yeah,
right now we all believe in this,
that's what I'm saying. It
you
makes it
know,
true. It's a
material
paradigm.
thing, and it makes it true. It's like, and if you keep looking and expect to find something, like you're probably going to find it in that sense. But
Hmm.
right now, um we know so little about the universe. So although you can predict the movement of these planetary bodies with math, and then look and like, oh, it's right, so obviously our theory's correct, right? But like the Big Bang, man, I went down a rabbit hole about the Big Bang, and it's not looking good, dude. Like the whole shit with the James Webb telescope, of the more data that they're getting, they keep like failing in the predictions that the Big Bang made, like a
Right.
lot of shit. They expected, I don't know. I didn't go into like the necessarily the details of it, but it was like they haven't found enough hydrogen or some shit like that, just a bunch of these predictions that the Big Bang made, and they're like, yeah, like we haven't really seen any of that shit. And the universe looks like it's expanding right now, but I don't know. Do they really fucking know that? I
No,
don't know.
the whole thing's
Yeah.
elusive too. I think that's kind of the
It's all
funny
based
thing.
on the Doppler effect and the red shift and the blue shift.
And what the fuck is
And
that shift?
you know who came up with the Big Bang Theory? It was a priest.
I believe it. Yeah, like most things,
Yeah, it was
most
a Jesuit
contemporary, yeah, ideas.
priest.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, our calendar was invented by the Pope Gregory. The Gregorian calendar. I mean, yeah, most of the shit we are tolerating today was given to us by those slack jaws.
Okay, Georges I'm not even gonna try to pronounce it. Belgian Catholic priest turned cosmologist. Of course, he's Catholic, dude.
So honestly, probably one of the
Interesting.
best Big Bang theories I've ever heard that I liked, and I vaguely think we may have talked about this already in a previous podcast. So forgive me if I'm repeating, but the one that Elon Musk talked about with it being a zero sum state and how it basically the only other thing in that we're aware of that operates that way that goes from a nothing to suddenly something is a computer program until it's initiated,
Yeah.
until the ones and zeros are kicking on, it's literally in a zero sum state of nothing. Like
Right.
like your Sim City, like the game. And that makes me think about that. Like, oh, when the game is on and thriving, are those actual sentient realities until you turn it off, and it's like the end of a universe to and it's a big bang whenever you start a program, and maybe again, and then this world is just
Mm.
another thing that it was initiated that went from nothing instantly into something, because that's where I guess the theory to me makes sense, is that all of our knowledge and understanding runs back to that point where it's like, oh, there's this moment before everything that just suddenly it's a brick
Yeah,
wall.
that's how they
Right. It's
got to it, is they
unknowable.
look at like
Yeah.
it's kind of expanding now, so
Yeah.
therefore at one point it was all like
But that's
this
identical to a
singularity,
computer
you
program.
know?
In functionality, that's identical to a computer program. It starts out as
Right.
literally nothing, and then once it's initiated, it starts to grow and expand and evolve and calculate and self-learn and do all the shit. But it takes that initial somebody, again, initiating the program, flipping on the ones and zeros. And so
Yeah.
maybe that was when our moment burst into maybe that was when somebody, flipped
Wasn't
on the
there
code.
when
I don't know.
Isaac Asimov had a short story that was kind of like that. They build this like super robot to ask it about the entropy of the universe or whatever, and it's like I need to think about that, and then like 100,000 years later, it builds another more advanced computer,
That was
to try to solve this
Hitchhiker's
uh,
Guide to the Galaxy
thing.
42.
Was it?
Yeah.
Well,
The
so
Supreme
that
computer
on
needed to build another Supreme computer to get its answer, and it still
to
came
get
out
the
with 40.
answer.
It still came out with
Yes, that's
42.
what happens in here, and then like eventually, like millions of years in the future, they just have the most advanced computer ever, and it's still just like I don't know. And then like heat death happens, and the universe is like expanding and cold and whatever, and then the computer's still there, and then it's like, oh, I got the answer. Let there be light, and it's like it just creates another one.
And I think that kind of comes down to the point I've noticed anyway in investigating all of this, what I think is going on. It's just I think that's the fundamental thing is existence creates more existence. That's all it wants is more existence, more experience. And I think in essence, the universe is just out for a total sum of all experience, and I think that's why every experience plays out and is valid. Because I don't think the universe is picky. I think it just is literally its only modus operandi is to complete as much experience in totality, and I think, frankly, it's infinite. And I don't because I think, you know,
Yeah, if
all
it is
all the
infinite,
arrangements
then
of things, there's an infinite
it,
way for that to go down.
it might just be a byproduct of an infinite universe. So, like if you have an infinite universe, then you're gonna have every single possibility of outcomes.
Well,
All the
right,
experiences
but
and
then it
everything.
gets into, even if that, okay, we can agree on that. Let's say society comes to that agreement. Okay, cool. The universe is just this self-replicate. I mean, because that's what we do. All we want to do is reproduce. That's what plants are doing. Funguses are doing. I mean, everything we look around is just constantly in the process of some sort of reproduction, right? So
Yeah,
I think the big Kahuna question though is what initiated the ultimate process. Like, I mean, like, that's what breaks my brain. If this is happening and the universe is this big grand functioning machine that it's just cranking out multiverses just for the sake of having as much experience as possible, well, what the fuck initiated that?
Yeah, I mean, you can absolutely
You
used to
know, I
drive me
can't ask
crazy
that
when I was
question.
a kid. I would just
I
go in
mean,
these
where does I
circles
mean
and be
that's where
like,
your mind goes.
ah.
Ah, you just like, oh man,
Yeah, even if there's like a God that created everything, it's like, all right,
what?
well, what made God, dude?
Right, right.
And it would
It
hurt. It would hurt the
it
front of my
does. It
brain
does.
when I
It
used to
literally,
think
like I
about it
said,
when I was a
it
kid,
does.
you
It
know?
breaks the mechanics. It's like
Yeah,
there's something
yeah.
wired into us. Like you cannot know the answers to these things because it goes back to that thing, like I said, about to understand a dimension is to go there. I feel that if you were like have the epiphany about what we just talked about, I think you just like transform or vaporize or
Just
you
poof.
just whatever. Yeah. Or I think you would be so like
Just
hyper sentient you could just choose whatever you want to be, become an eagle and fly the fuck out of the room. You know, you just
you.
like
What was the Hitchhiker's Guide? God disappeared in a puff of logic or something.
oh yeah, I actually just found the original series
Uh,
from the 80s, dude. It's on Hulu. I didn't even know they had an old British one.
what?
It's like an old British hit. It's Hitchhiker's Guide. It's what the movie's based off of. But it's an old,
Oh, really?
yeah, it's an old
There was a
multi-part
TV
a
show?
TV show. Yeah.
I didn't know that.
Yeah.
When did
Check
that
it out on
novel come
Hulu.
out? Was that was
The
Arthur C.
novels were in like
Clarke,
the
right?
70s, I think. I think they were
70s.
70s,
Yeah,
and the
that's
show
pretty
was
young.
late
It,
80s. Yeah.
it seemed very, very influenced by Isaac Asimov.
Yeah,
But I
probably.
like, I read it when I was a kid, but
Yeah, I
it was
like those
good.
books. They are
Yeah.
good. Douglas Adams, yeah, good shit. Yeah.
Douglas Adams. What did I say? Arthur C. Clarke? What did Arthur
You
C.
know, he
Clarke
said,
do?
I don't even know who the fuck you said.
Oh, yeah.
But yeah,
Whatever.
Douglas Adams.
One of
Yeah,
those.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. But yeah, I forgot.
Yeah.
It's funny they just played that part actually in the old one. It was something. What did they say about God that made him? Just I forget what
It
the
was, it
conundrum
was,
was.
if you proved God, since God is based on like faith, then like people wouldn't have faith, so then God would just disappear in a puff of logic,
Yeah, something
something
like
like
yeah.
that,
God was like, "You're right. Yeah, okay. Poof, you got me."
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah. Because like it's like, well, if everybody knows that you exist, then there's no faith anymore.
right. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, something like that.
But yeah,
Yeah,
it's a
it's interesting.
conundrum, all right, dude. It's a real head scratcher. But going back to the sound concept, I think it's probably one of our greatest investigative tools into these questions. Frankly, I mean that's why I've got into sound engineering and
Hmm.
worked in sound my whole life, just because I don't know the whole core concept of it fascinates me. And
Yeah.
I think about it too. As simple as when somebody's talking at you like this, like in a podcast or conversation, it's a window into who they are. But I
Hmm.
always, as a kid, would be fascinated when I'd be around, somebody of a foreign language that I didn't understand, and you're just hearing it as like a sound, meh, 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 meh. But my brain
Hmm.
would be fascinated. Oh, if I just understood the code, it would be valuable information to me. But since I
Yeah, I
don't
would
understand
instantly
it, I just
switch.
hear it squawk, 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 squawk. And so when you hear these, like the sound we just listened to, the universe sound, maybe if you had a different tuning, maybe that would be some crazy information is in there.
Oh,
Maybe you know
well,
what
it
I
is
mean?
information.
And that's
Yeah,
what I'm
so you're
saying,
right.
and I think that's
You're
what our
right to
sense is when we hear it. It's
decipher
just
it.
the. But maybe if we
Yeah,
had
that's
some
why it makes you
way,
feel something.
yeah, something like when you're standing
Yeah.
next to someone speaking French and you don't
Whoa.
get it, you're like, oh, you kind of get the vibe of what they're talking about. Like you can tell
Sure,
voice
you can
tone.
tell if they're
Like someone's like,
angry
je
or
suis
whatever.
voix versus, "Hi, yeah, yeah," it's like you can,
Well,
yeah.
that's if they're German, then they just sound
Right.
angry.
But I'm just saying it's like, oh man, I remember like I used to fuck with the family dog and you'd be like, I hate you, you're such a piece of shit. Oh, and it'd be like, oh, and then you'd
It's
be like,
like,
good dog. Good
yeah,
dog, I love you so much. I'm like, oh, don't hurt me, and yeah, they're just
right. It's
responding
just
to your
picking up
tone.
on
Yeah,
the tone.
exactly.
Tone's
It
important,
very
dude.
much is. Because,
Tone's important. All the
tones
married
that
dudes know.
that essence. So the universe tone was nice. So thanks for letting me geek out on that. And I have
Oh, that I mean, so it invoked a wide range of emotions in me. That the deep, the drums is in the deep, right? To harken back to Lord of the Rings again. That's intense, man. That gave me like a little bit of that existential dread, but also I don't know. It's also kind of soothing. I felt a wide array of emotions hearing that. And then
especially
I don't know what the fuck, like the chirps and the it sounded like, and then why does it change? I figured it would be constant. You know,
no, no. It's like I said, it's just
that's
kind of
wild, man.
constantly.
Yeah, I know. Like every 3 months or so, there's always like, oh, we picked up another weird radio signal from deep space, and it's repeating and blah blah blah. But it always seems to
So have you ever
wind up
heard of
being
this?
nothing.
Have you ever heard of this thing called a MIDI sprout? So
No,
you,
I never heard of that.
so you can. It's a little thing you get, and it has two little electrodes on it. You can hook it to any plant, like the ones behind me, and it converts the biorhythmics of plants into MIDI notes. So, for instance,
Oh, right, where the plant can play the sound, right?
yeah, this is a MIDI
Yeah.
controller, and it takes
Yeah,
MIDI notes,
right.
and so it could
I
basically
have seen
convert
that.
biorhythmics of plants to
Yeah.
MIDI notes, right? And then
So
there's an
let
app to
the
your phone.
plant play
We'll
music
play
because the plant
exactly. Yeah, it does.
can control,
So the
the
plants
output.
are just like that universe sound. They're inconsistent and very random. And you want to know something interesting? The only
Hmm.
plants that I've tested. So my cousin had one in my last house that I lived in. The only plants that have a rhythm are mushrooms.
Oh, of course,
Yeah.
dude.
And so there's this mycologist. I saw an
Huh.
online thing with Paul Stamets during
Of
COVID. They did
course.
like an all, virtual mushroom thing. Anyway, they had this dude
Mm-hmm.
and he did the biorhythmic thing on a big grow block of mycelium for some oyster mushrooms or something. And he plugged it to this big, like, loud amp and it played. It almost sounded like an old timey rhythm. Anyway, then this dude played ragtime
Huh.
piano to it, and he was like sitting there playing ragtime piano to the biorhythmic of the mushrooms, and they sounded like an old timey band from like the big doodle doodle. It was wild. It was like
Yeah.
holy shit, the
Play like
mushrooms are playing like
camp
this.
down races.
Yeah, but it was like the mushrooms had this very
Doo-dah.
classic, like almost old western human,
Of
like
course,
that. I
dude.
right, and this guy was just playing
They're
his ragtime
classy.
with it. He's like, "Look, I'm jamming with the mushrooms." Like,
That's
world's
pretty dope.
far
Yeah.
out place.
Well, it'd be kind of bonkers if like a plant was just real, like just started blasting some Led Zeppelin or something.
Right?
You should try it
Some
with your
Rush.
tobacco, man.
I don't have it.
Old tobacco.
My cousin had it. The thing's it's several hundred
Mm.
dollars. I didn't want to.
Oh
I
yeah,
didn't care that much.
that's a little much.
It is.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a little over the top, but it's a cool little thing. She was all about it. She was all like sitting in her room, like meditating to her plants, and she would go to like
Playing
parks
some
and do
planar
it. She would like bring it to
jams.
like parks
Yeah.
and like hang out under a tree and listen to it. And yeah, she
What if
was.
what if she found like the Beethoven of
Yeah, right.
plants?
I know you like hook it up, and all of a sudden
Yeah. Dun, 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 dun,
you're
dun,
like,
dun, dun.
hmm.
Doo-doo.
Or what was if you hooked one up and start talking? And be like,
Oh hell yeah.
hello, hello,
Yeah.
hello. Can you hear me?
Water me.
Hello, hello, yeah. Hey, fucker, water.
Yeah. Do you have
Yeah.
any more of those deep space sound clips?
I
Or
don't.
is it
Like, I
just
could
that
play
one?
that one again. Do I hear it again?
Nah, it's fine. Yeah. So I went down I didn't know what to research for this episode. So
Fact. Hold on. While you're
I
talking
read
about that,
this
I might try
I
to
read
break.
this book called Who Built the Moon? I was like, that's kind of has to do with astronomy, I guess. But it's pretty interesting. It's this book about all the anomalies with our moon, all the weirdness, right? And um, the two authors, actually, let me say who the authors are since I'm calling it out. um, Sorry. So Christopher Knight and Alan Butler were the authors of pretty good book. Um, it's very heavy on hypothesizing and a lot of background on like ancient megalithic builders. Apparently they had written a previous book that's like all about that stuff and the theory that the old megalithic civilizations had a specific measuring unit. They call it the megalithic yard. But anyways, so the whole book is about all this weirdness with the moon, and they're saying like the moon probably isn't natural, like it's an artificially created thing. And then in the end, like the last chapter, they're like, yeah, we think it's our own civilization in the future invents time travel and goes back in time and builds the moon, and they add in all these weird mathematical coincidences to kind of like give us the hint that it was ourselves from the future, which is it was a little out there. Most of the book's like really grounded in science and data. And all of a
And then
sudden at
then
the
they,
end
and
of
then
it,
they make
it's
that.
like
Huh.
It's us from the future going back in time and building the moon, you know? I
Huh.
was like, all right, that's kind of a weird left turn, but
Well, NASA has a lot of photos of the backside of the moon, and there are these like towers that are like half mile,
I
mile
was,
high.
yeah, I was
They're
gonna
huge, and
bring that
they
up. There
protrude
are,
out of the
you know,
moon really,
those
really
pictures are
far.
fun, dude. And then
Yeah, and
there was a recent
those are from
one.
NASA. Those aren't like from some hogwash
Yeah,
fucking,
yeah,
Sputnik or some shit.
yeah. If you just Google like structures on the moon, there's a plethora of stuff like that that doesn't look man-made. There was one recently of like two parallel tracks, you know, and it's like first they said it was a boulder or something rolling down, but like there's two of them and they're parallel, and then I think eventually they're like, oh, it's a Soviet rover or something like that. But people like looked at where the Soviet rovers were; they like weren't near it, you know. So yeah, but all right, let me tell you some of the weird shit about the moon. So, have you ever thought about a total solar eclipse and how strange it is that we get total solar eclipses? So,
I
the
mean,
reason we
I've only experienced one. Did you see the one
right
a
from a
couple of
few
years
years
ago?
back,
Yeah.
right? I've always kind of taken them for granted, but so all right, the diameter of the sun, right? It's 400 times greater than the diameter of the moon, right? But the distance from the Earth to the sun is 400, also 400 times greater than the distance from the Earth to the moon, right? So, in other words, the sun's 400 times larger than the moon, and it's also 400 times further away. So, if you think about that
So it
coincidence,
makes
you know,
yeah, it lines up
it's
just right.
it lines up just right, and it's like this astronomical coincidence because if the sun was, you know, 387 times further
Or
away, then
it's
you wouldn't get a
not
total
a
you
coincidence.
wouldn't get a eclipse. Well, exactly. Yeah, that's
Dun
what.
dun dun bum 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 bum
So
bum bum
it's a
bum.
pretty crazy quote unquote coincidence, right? You know, Asimov, like we were saying, Isaac Asimov, he said it was the biggest coincidence ever, the most unlikely coincidence ever, right? But there's some more weirdness with it. So the moon is 27.32% the size of the Earth, right? In terms of diameter. A full lunar orbit around the Earth takes 27.32 days. it's it's the same number, right? That's pretty crazy. And then so an Earth year, right? We have 366 days in an Earth year, right? Guess what the reciprocal of 366
That
is?
was 365.
Well, there's yeah,
Point
it's
point
365
and a
point
quarter
whatever,
and a
you
quarter. That's
know.
the leap year.
So, right, yeah, leap
Yeah.
year, yeah.
Every 4
So
years.
guess what the reciprocal of 366 is though?
36? I don't know.
It's also 2732.
What does that mean?
So because the remember the moon is 27.32% the size of the Earth,
Oh, okay.
and the moon takes 27.32 days to orbit
Okay.
the Earth, and the reciprocal of our how many days in our year is 27.3. Like you see this number, you know, three
Yeah.
times,
Yeah.
and it's not there's
So
not
it's
like a
formula.
correlation. It's have to be a fucking coincidence,
Yeah, it's
you know.
formulaic though. So,
But it's a massive, like crazy astronomical coincidence. You pair that with the whole solar eclipses being perfect, starts to get a little
yeah,
spooky.
right.
Yeah,
Seems a little orchestrated. I agree. It's like
exactly right.
I was actually
Yeah,
just talking to a gal tonight about she had just seen the Truman Show for the first time.
dude, I was gonna bring that up.
I know, right?
Where's the director? Right?
Whoa.
Where's the
I
director
know,
in that?
right? That's what I was
In
gonna
his
say.
little office up there?
Yeah,
He's in the moon, right?
and it's all orchestrated. But I'm saying,
Yeah.
thing and I just like the psychology of that. That when you are just a little gap in the knowledge be underneath the orchestrators, you can have that level of conduction put down upon you. You know what I mean? And who's to say that we're so
Yeah.
smart
And you take it
and
for
we
granted.
we don't have that same level of blindness and orchestration happening in our own lives. I mean, that's kind of the same fallacy of Truman, and what keeps him in his little world is that assumption that he's got,
That everything's normal and
right,
it's just that way
exactly.
because it should be,
And you
you
notice
know?
in our society, we're very hinged on that. And that's why things like, psychedelics and even down to meditation and sabbaticals and stuff are frowned upon. The cultural revolutions are frowned upon because, people doing that doesn't, I don't know, necessarily benefit status quos, because I think,
Hmm.
when somebody's orchestrating something, it's because they're getting a benefit. It's like how, yeah, Christoph in the Moon, his benefit was he was the producer of a
Krista.
show, and it was his career. It's as simple as that. Truman's whole
Hmm.
life was just to basically keep people's careers going. All the people who worked on the set, the producers, Christoph, that was the point of Truman's existence. So if somebody was orchestrating Planet Earth, it would be for a reason to their own. And what I'm saying, and that
Yeah,
reason could be
right.
anything. Maybe, something like Truman Show,
Yeah.
as humans, we can only fathom it must be for work and money. But maybe these beings that are orchestrating our planet, it's something much different of an intention. Maybe it's energy.
Well,
Maybe it's energy they're seeking, or like you're saying,
yeah.
they're in the future
Like
projecting
we're a
themselves back,
farm.
or right. I mean, I'm saying it could be any number of things. I doubt it just because it's a job. If it's that petty, then whatever. The universe is
Yeah, I've
boring.
I've been thinking about that recently. Like, all right, you know how like they keep coming out with new Alien. Like there's the whole Navy coming out with the UFO shit.
Yeah.
And I was like, so I don't know if we find out there's aliens in the next 10 years, like a very public official disclosure, and like I don't, they come down and land and meet us and
It seems
shit,
like that's almost
and it
imminent.
and it turns out there's like a galactic federation, but like, what if they're capitalists? How much of a fucking bummer that
Yeah,
would be.
right. Well, I was gonna
Like,
say maybe
oh
we're not
no.
special in the universe in that sense. Maybe we are just regurgitating the kind of cosmic way things evolve, and maybe yeah, commerce and capitalism is just a natural part of every species evolution.
Yeah, wow. You would
Yeah,
hope that we'd evolve out of it. At least if there's a galactic federation that's
sure.
that's capitalist, like
Ugh.
there's just there's like four mega corporations that own like our
Yeah,
solar system. It's like Amazon, but
yeah,
like on
right.
a cosmic level. That would be such a fucking bummer.
Dude, well, it's in
Terrible.
Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. That's why they demolished Earth. Remember, they were just making a bypass, and they're like, "Oh,
Yeah.
the
Yeah, like
blueprints have
wow.
been in the galactic, wherever for you guys to look at." And sorry, planet Earth, you
Yeah.
weren't aware. You're bad. We're demolishing your planet for a byway.
Yeah. Oh man. Well, okay, so if some ancient, very advanced tech, alien race did place the moon, built the moon and placed it there, one of the reasons why would be to allow life on Earth to form,
Hmm.
because life might not have formed on Earth without a moon. So the tidal forces, right, back billions of years ago when life formed, the moon was way closer, right? So it had even crazier tides. We're talking like 10,000 foot tides that churned up the Earth's mantle, right? And deposited, it churned up all that ocean and Earth, allowing like mineral deposits and the perfect conditions for life to form, right? But also, the fact that we have a moon prevents the Earth from being tidally locked with the sun, meaning like one side of the Earth would be facing the sun always as it turned. So you'd have like one side of the Earth being permanent day, the other side of the Earth being permanent night. On the side that's always facing the sun, it'd probably be too hot. Life might not form, right? At least not the way that it did, right?
Right.
And the Earth, it has that 23-degree, I think, obliquity, that wobble. So that
Obliquity. That's a good word.
obliquity, yeah, I think that's what it's called, right?
I, I,
Or
I mean,
precession or something like that.
you said it in
Whatever.
a way
It's
that had me totally convinced that you know what you're talking about.
kind of. So yeah, well, the
Obliquity.
Earth, the Earth is not straight up and down, right? It's tilted just a little bit,
Yeah,
right?
okay. That's
And that's
obliquity,
because
huh?
of the moon. The moon stabilizes it. Without that, it would either, the Earth might be straight up and down, or it would be way greater, right? So it kind of moderates that tilt. That allows, obviously, we have seasons because of that tilt.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah.
And if we didn't, at the equator, it would be getting so much radiation from the sun, it might not even be habitable. It would be so hot around the equator. And then the ice caps would be way bigger, it'd be way too cold at the top and the bottom. You'd have this middle band where it's too hot, you know. So once again, might not get in life, right? It's weird. The moon just happens to be here to create these perfect conditions for life to quote unquote evolve on our planet, right? So
Yeah.
that might be the reason that somebody built it and put it there, you know?
Right. Yeah. I mean, I don't know. I look at what's going on and just what we're replicating and how we're able to create realities and computer programs. And yeah, to me, it's not hard to accept that we could be living something very similar in the way that, if you look at what you're describing, it kind of just feels like parameters of a program. You know what I mean? Seems like those are things
It's just a
somebody,
lot of coincidences,
yeah,
man.
or not. And
You
like I said,
know?
it feels programmed. It feels like somebody set that to be just that. Because think about how precise a computer
Exactly.
program is. You know what I mean? They're
Yeah.
they're
Yeah.
they're hyper literal. They go specifically to what somebody has coded it to be, and that's what you're describing. That's what that all feels like. There's an intention behind it, and if it is,
Yeah.
and then here's the other thing. Both sides of it, it's still mysterious. Even if it is just random chaos and it fell into line like that, that's still pretty unfucking believable too. Either outcome is still
Yeah,
like,
right.
damn. I mean, yeah, that is just a cosmic coincidence, and
Well,
this thing just rolled into being like that, and
it could
nobody
be.
did
It
anything.
it
That's
could be.
spectacular. Right, and it could
Maybe you
be.
need a giant moon in order to have life on a planet, right? Like,
Right.
so for us, like life happened, we're here, so
I'm saying
obviously
it
we have a moon
happened.
like that.
That's what I'm saying.
Maybe on every other random planet, there's no life on planets that don't have a kick-ass moon, you know, and then planets that do have a kick-ass moon, that you get life, you
Yeah.
know. So then to all of them, it's like, whoa, we're special, dude. Like, you know, like this can't be a coincidence when really it's after that filter, you know, that you need that moon in order for the life to happen. So to in all the perspective of all the life is, you know, just thinking, oh, this is too crazy of a coincidence, you know.
Yeah, or maybe it's more bizarre. Maybe we're the only ones that
Or it
have
was
a moon, and this
placed
is it.
there. You know,
Yeah.
the math stuff with it is pretty wild. But
Well, and that
so
this
let's
is
talk.
all hyper specific to just here. You know what I'm saying? Maybe we're the only place in the entire cosmos that looks and acts exactly like this. Has this moon, has this
Well,
position, has this
we
planet,
can,
has this way of life. I do believe in
yeah,
novelty. I think that's what I'm saying. I think the universe is out to have novelty in all parts of it. So I think maybe,
yeah,
we really are a unique, we're a unique
maybe,
entity altogether. And so you really can't even compare like, oh, what are the other planet moon situations like? Maybe there just doesn't fucking matter. Maybe all this precision is
hmm
literally geared to this place and this place only. You know what I mean?
yeah,
I think,
yeah. We always
yeah.
make that assumption of like,
Yeah, it's
oh,
uniform, and
does this
this is
planet have water and
that's what I'm
oxygen so
saying.
that it
We're
can have
looking for
life? And I'm like,
life like
why would it
ours.
need that? You know,
Right.
that's what we need. But
Right.
like, I'm sure you could have
Yeah.
way different kinds of life.
Well,
You
that
know,
you can't even
we don't even know
fathom.
what life is. We can't recreate it in a lab.
Yeah, exactly.
You know,
Yeah, and that's what I'm saying. And I
why
think
would you
other
assume make all those assumptions?
yeah, I think the other realities are so bizarre you can't even, and it goes back to what I was saying, what ayahuasca was showing. To understand them is to literally go and experience them. You can't be experiencing this reality while simultaneously understanding another. You know what I mean? Because I think that's hyper
Yeah,
literal. I
right.
think the literal act of understanding your environment makes you involved in it, if that makes sense. And I've felt that many
Yeah,
times, like going in and out of realms and trips of like when you're there and
dreams.
yeah, dreams. And when you're there and you're lucid and you're understanding that time and place, you're
It makes
present.
sense.
Yeah, and you're and
Yeah,
you're literally present there, right? But
yeah,
when you
yeah.
fall asleep and you forget about this room and this place, you go other places. When you lay down in a psychedelic ceremony and a shaman sings at you, you go to other places and you're present there for that time. But you're not doing both. You're not present here and there. And I think there, like I said, there's some very literalness to that. And so I think your mind is always keeping you here in this understanding of this world, and there's something very particular to that. And I think this, brick wall, we went in that headache you're describing when you get to this place where you just can't
Mm-hmm.
think past it. I think that's literally the program keeping you in the program. It's like you can't think
A
outside of it.
threshold,
Yeah, it's like
threshold guardian.
exactly. Like you can't break through
Yeah.
because you will transform into the other program if you break this one. So just stay put,
Maybe it would
basically.
snap your tether. You know,
That's
have you
what,
ever
that's
heard of
what I'm
like people
saying.
doing
Hmm.
out of body experiences? They say they see this like silver cord from their ethereal body going to their physical body, and it's like it's like a
Yeah.
cord, like an astronaut on a spacewalk,
Right. Totally.
and it keeps them tethered, and then like, and people say that with when they're astral projecting as well, and they're like, yeah, if you ever just want to go back, like if you get scared or whatever, you just kind of think about that cord, and bam, you get snapped back like a rubber band.
So, speaking of that, here's a good time to drop a mushroom story. This was fairly recently, maybe 4 or 5 years ago, just a solo. It was kind of a mini dose, like a gram. I was taking a walk out in a forest by myself.
Oh, that's cute. Just
Yeah, yeah, just a little wander, But this was a strange experience. This one kind of shook me. I was out there by myself, very quiet, and bringing music on this one, just listening to the silence of nature, and I started to hear like what sounded almost like a fire alarm going off, but it sounded like up in the sky, and it started to really fuck with me because I couldn't it was like almost a sound like we were hearing, but in a different way. It was coming from out, and it was like an alarm sound.
Yeah.
And then I could hear like what sounded like footsteps on like a metal floor, like tonk tonk tonk, and it's like the sound, and people kind of like hey, like murmuring and stuff. And I had like sat down and I closed my eyes. And when I closed my eyes, that feeling when you're waking up early in the morning and you're still deep asleep and you're trying to open your eyes and you can feel yourself physically moving your eyes in your sleep. That makes sense.
Yeah.
Like in your dream, and you're like, oh, I'm starting to wake up, and you're starting to like feel yourself like trying to open your eyes. So when I sat down in the woods and closed my eyes, I started to instantly have that feeling, and I could like see like what felt like inside of like a ship and people running around, and this like kind of a situation was happening, and I could hear the noise. And then somebody was telling me like, oh, hey, you're waking up from the VR, like it's okay, it's just a fire alarm, like go back, to what
back to Earth.
Back to what you're doing on Earth. And as I was sitting there, I just like had this like epiphany,
Back
like
in the Earth
like
game.
oh, like we're actually the ones up there, wherever, the moon or whatever, in the little VR pods coming down and having the Earth experience from these things that we're witnessing from down here. And I just kind of had that like cosmic giggle of like, oh, everything we look up and think is an alien is actually just ourselves saying like, no, like stay in the fucking
you're playing
thing,
the game, dude.
Yeah, like keep
like,
in there, quit trying to wake up. And it was weird, and it was like this weird feeling for a moment where I felt like I was accidentally waking up out there because of some crisis that was happening, and I could hear the sound, and I was like, no, stay.
There was a fire on your spaceship.
Yeah,
or
stay
some
plugged in, dude. Like where they jack in on the Matrix.
We got it, dude. We'll wake you up if we need you.
Where they would jack in on the Matrix in their crappy dinghy, they're in the sewer system.
Dude, I'll tell you what, there's nothing worse than trying to sleep and getting woken up from a fire alarm, dude.
Right?
On the submarine, it was the worst.
That's right, you were in a sub, dude. Oof.
Oh, yeah, it's funny. You telling that story is like, oh, I've been there, dude.
Isn't it weird?
You're like,
it was just a
got
deja
off
vu
watch
thing.
12 hours, and then like maybe a half hour into your slumber, you just, all hand, fire and upper level.
But this was weird because I was hearing it alone in the woods, and it wouldn't go away. It was one of those things that was starting to like,
wild,
actually
man.
freak me out. I'm like, all right, this is getting.
It's a comforting
this is
thought,
getting
though.
bizarre.
I hope that's true. Yeah. That we are just like, there's layers to our reality, and this is just kind of a game. And like, when you pass on, you'll like wake up and be like, oh yeah, that was a fun game,
or like you were testing a new technology. That's what I think maybe. And I've had this thought before. When other species transcend a planet, they rove the planet or they rove the universe. But I think maybe planets being these spheres, you can like kind of belly up next to it, and then like in Futurama, jack on. Your spaceship can like plug into a planet, and then you can have like these like downloads into it and experiences. And then once your society has enough technology, you can start going around the universe. And it's like they're like different levels, or they're like different different what's the game, Minecraft worlds. You can just go around and like Minecraft. Oh, this is this one, this is this one, this is this one. And I think
that'd be fun.
Yeah, and I think about this: if the universe really is infinite, what would be signing up for like a few thousand lifetime go arounds to a planetary sphere and to get some experience and to go and soak it up and see what it's like? And then it's and I think honestly, Total Recall, the Arnold Schwarzenegger movie from the 80s,
Total Recall
literally like is the answer to what's going on, because it was just he had to forget to make it real, and that's the main point.
To make it fun.
And he gets so lost in it.
Good. good
he gets
explanation for
so
death.
lost in it that he
Yeah.
himself can't remember that he's in a simulation, and he believes it, and that's the whole premise of the movie. And at the end, he
Yeah.
like has his like, oh fuck, that's right. And I knew, and they prepped him before, like it's gonna get so real, you're gonna forget that you entered into this, and try not to get lost in it. To the
Yeah.
point where when they
Try
brought out
not
his
to forget.
doppelganger, remember, they brought
Yeah.
him something. He's like, Arno, listen to me, it's not
Listen
real,
to
and he
me.
just shoots himself in the face and runs off. He's like, fuck this.
Yeah.
That's what I'm
Yeah.
saying. That's why I think
That's
this could
great.
be that real. And I noticed, and to me, the indicator of that is everything here is kind of bent on this like lack of knowing. I think the lack of
Yeah.
knowing is very important here. I think that's keeping us here, frankly. I think if you were to remember that you were in the pod doing the simulation, it would just instantly ruin. I'm like, oh man, bummer. Like surprise
Yeah.
party's been kiboshed. Like fuck.
Have you ever heard of the theory that the moon is a soul collector? Like
Oh,
it's what
soul
um
collector.
yeah, it's like what recycles our souls, for
Oh, that's just like
reincarnation.
the reincarnation waiting room. You like go up there and
Yeah.
kick it in the
Well,
moon,
it's
kick it in
it's
the
the
moon
light.
for a while, and you get your
It's
orders for your next life and
Yeah, it's like
work
the
it
light
out.
tunnel that you see. That's just the
It's just the moon sucking
and
you
it
up.
draws you into it, beaming you up in there, and then you get beamed back down,
And maybe it's
and you
just
get
like a
your
room of
moment again.
computers where you go, and it's like a boring ass room, just rows of computers where you go, and you're
Yeah,
like,
there's just like
you know,
dudes typing on
yeah.
computers in the middle of it. Okay, so all right, this is a good tie back in. Okay, so like we said, the moon is 27.32% the size of Earth, right?
Yes,
It's a
that
really big moon. It's huge compared to like its percentage compared to Earth, right? So for reference,
I was just gonna
Jupiter's
say
way
the
bigger
other
than
the
Earth,
other planets' moons are like itty bitty
tiny,
compared to the
right?
planet. Yeah, I
Compared to
get
the
that.
parent planet.
Yeah,
Yeah, like Jupiter, it's 1,300 Earths can
yeah,
fit
they're more
inside
like
Jupiter. It's
satellites.
massive.
They're like satellites
But
to their planets. Yeah.
Jupiter's largest moon, um, Ganymede, I think, it's
Hmm.
only 4% the size of Jupiter, right? So remember, our moon,
Yeah,
27% the
that's a
size of us. Ganymede,
yeah,
4%
and in
Jupiter, right?
cosmic numbers,
So
that's a big,
yeah,
one
it's
percent's a
weird,
huge
you know.
jump. Yeah, let
Yeah,
alone twenty
yeah. So
percent.
to have a moon that's 27% the size of the parent planet is odd. But here's the thing, our moon is really, really light. Okay. So even though it's over a quarter the size of the Earth, it's only about 1% of the Earth's mass. Okay. So
Interesting.
that means that there's either
It's
a huge
hollow. I've heard that.
discrepancy.
Yeah.
Wait, that's what I'm getting to. There might be a huge discrepancy in terms of heavy elements, like it's just lacking in heavy elements, which is not necessarily what we're finding because there's a shit ton of titanium on the moon and there's like uranium, neptunium, like there's a bunch of heavy elements up there. Or it's fucking hollow, or
Nep-
it has a lot of caves in it. Okay.
Neptunium. That's a element.
Yeah, yeah, Neptunium. Yeah, and
You're not just pulling
there's
that out of your beard.
no, no, yeah,
Oh,
that's an element. It's a transuranic element. I
okay.
think it's I think they they discovered Neptunium 237 on the moon, which is strange because that's usually a byproduct of nuclear fission, right?
Yeah.
But they also found uranium, so they think like the conventional explanation is that there's asteroid impacts hitting some uranium and compacting it and then causing some spontaneous fission or whatever. But it's strange. You wouldn't expect to see Neptunium 237 on the moon, right?
So you do know that I think it was the first Apollo mission that landed on the moon. They said the craft hit the moon. It rang like a bell for
Yeah,
like
that's
several
yeah.
hours. Yeah.
Wrangling like about, and they actually
Yeah.
did an experiment
Yeah.
because the astronauts were like, yeah, it was weird. It was like kind of
Yeah.
ringing
It
around. They did an
reverberated for
experiment.
several hours after they landed on it. Yeah.
Apollo 12, they set up seismic data, and then their escape thing, they shot some shit at the moon and crashed it, right? And it rang for like 3 hours, and it rang deep into the moon, right? So the official explanation is like, there's no water, so there's no dampening effect. But
Yeah.
I don't know, man. Kind of seems like it might be hollow or have massive cave systems in there.
I
something like
mean,
that.
and I mean, and then here's the thing. I
That's where
mean,
all the equipment is for the soul recycling. It's in there.
there could be, and I'm willing to bet that most of what they discovered out there probably never made it to the public's ears and eyes for
Oh,
consumption.
absolutely.
In fact,
There's
Buzz
still a
Aldrin
ton of
is
experiments that they did that are classified.
well, and Buzz
Why are they still
Aldrin, man, have
classified?
you heard that
You
guy?
know?
Buzz
Oh
Aldrin's
yeah,
out there, dude.
he's
He's
definitely said too much.
yeah, he lost his mind too. He's like totally rattled by whatever he experienced. I mean, he has the whole air of a human
Yeah.
being who's like shell shocked. You know what I mean? He's just
Yeah.
like I
Or
need
just really old though. He is pretty old.
yeah, or maybe he's just trying to milk some money. I don't know. But I mean, he seemed like he
Yeah.
witnessed some shit that he can't. He knows people
Yeah.
won't take him seriously on. You know what I mean? Because he's witnessed
Right.
it, and other people
He
didn't.
has said,
Yeah.
saw UFOs. Who's the other astronaut? Edgar Mitchell, maybe. There's been a few that have been like, hey, yeah, we've seen some shit up there, and for whatever reason, people don't really take that seriously. But
Yeah. Well, NASA has thousands and thousands of hours of footage and photographs of many
yeah,
weird things that they have in their archives, that they just kind of no one really gets to see, because
yeah, yeah.
NASA
I think that
actually
they airbrush shit
misconception
out too.
about NASA, and I was surprised to learn this. So they are not a public or a government run entity. They are actually privately funded,
Right. Yeah, they are
and it
private,
is
yeah.
says in their mission statement everything they discover is for their own. They don't have any disclosure.
They have no.
Yeah.
They're not obliged.
Yeah,
To
they're not they're
release
not
it
they're
to
not
everyone.
in it for like, oh, we're doing this for they're not a public
Yeah.
entity. They are a private
Yeah.
force. They were founded by three businessmen who funded it with their own money.
With CIA ties.
Yeah,
too, and
exactly.
there's been
Yeah.
so much money
But
laundering.
a lot of
with
people think they're
NASA.
like
Did-
some
did you know that
scientific thing, and they're not. I mean, they're their own force to figure out their own shit.
four of Lee Harvey Oswald's co-workers at the Riley Coffee Company went on to work at NASA?
Yeah, I believe it. Dude, I believe it.
What does that sound like to
Yeah,
you?
yeah.
They were getting paid off, probably, right?
Well, and what I take seriously is, it's come on,
Intelligence
humans,
agencies,
especially rich
you know?
humans, everyone wants to know the answers to these things. So of course they're going to use space exploration and stuff to
perfect.
try to
It's
get those
perfect.
answers. Yeah, and if they
Like,
have
hey,
a bunch
everybody,
of
we're
money,
gonna explore space. Give us a shit ton of funding, and then they
Yeah.
can just do whatever they want with it.
Yeah.
You know?
and then again, they have no legal obligation or even really no moral obligation to or
No,
to
yeah, well, why would
disclose
they?
anything to the public that they don't want to. If they see some shit they think is going to rattle, they're just going to just go, I get put it in the archive.
Yeah, that
Yeah.
comes from the Brookings report back in like 1940s or 1950s. It's the Brookings Institute did a study on like what the effects would be to society if there was mass public disclosure about aliens. And they were like, "Oh, society would collapse and blah 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 blah," And they're still using that as a defense as to why they can classify all this data and why they won't release things to the public. And it's from like 19 Dickety too, man. It's stupid.
Yeah.
It sucks. It
Yeah.
sucks.
So it really boils down to everyone's got to do their own exploration. That's what I took seriously. What as a young person, when I was kind of like, starting to get into interdimensional hyperspace travel, is realizing it's kind of up to each one of us to prod the mysteries ourselves, and you really can't expect any, agency, government, other person, family member, anyone to really give you any answers. I think that's probably one of the biggest epiphanies I think most people end up having is, the only way to know is to experience it for yourself. And the answers to these things come in many forms. And I think every person who, goes to those mountaintops and goes to those realms comes back with their own version of it. And I think that's another part of kind of that answer is like, it's so multifaceted. There's nobody can wrap their mind around it. Yet everyone's always trying to contain it in like a single answer. I think that's kind of the joke.
Yeah,
The
that's
joke
what
in
I've
Hitchhiker's Guide. Oh, it's
noticed.
42. We always want to make it some number or some thing or some formula, but in reality, it's everything that can be experienced. And if it's in reality,
yeah.
it's there and it makes sense. If it can be experienced, equated, seen,
it's real.
whatever, it's real. It made it in, and it's just as valid as any other thing. It's just,
Yeah, you
it's,
see that a lot with modern science and like archaeology, like we were talking about last week, is like these scientists come with the conclusion before they really analyze all the evidence, and then everything that they learn after that, they try to cram it into their existing model, you know.
Right.
And
Right.
that's a huge deal with the moon. They they don't know how the moon was formed, right? There's like these three main theories, and none of them really work all that well. So you have the co-formation theory, where it's like there was a big disk, you know, and then the Earth formed and the moon formed, right? But that doesn't really make sense due to the density discrepancy. It would be probably uniform if that was how it was formed. And then you have the capture theory, where it came from somewhere else and then just got
Right.
caught in our orbit.
Mm-hmm.
That's wrong, because we see the same isotopic ratios on the moon as we do with Earth. So, do you know what an isotopic ratio is? All right, so isotopes are like different types of the same element, right? So you can have like uranium 235 and uranium 238, right? They're both uranium, but one of them has more neutrons,
Mm.
right? So it has a different atomic mass, but it has the same chemical properties and it reacts the same way, right? So when we dig up like a chunk of uranium, you can look at it and see what percent of that uranium is 235 or 238, and then the ratios that you find there is like it's like a signature for where it was formed in the solar system or the galaxy or whatever.
Hmm.
It's like a genetic signature of that material, right?
Right. Okay.
So the moon and the Earth both have the same oxygen isotopic ratios, indicating they were formed at the same distance from the sun, right?
Hmm.
So that kind of throws out the capture theory, right? So what they think right now is called the giant impact hypothesis. They think that another planet about the size of Mars collided with the Earth and shit out the moon, essentially.
Okay.
But
Ooh.
yeah,
I don't know.
for it to work, though, for the model to work, the impact would have had to have vaporized the Earth, right, along with the other planet, and then it would form like this weird donut shaped cloud of like vaporized rock, and that's called a synesta, right? So then the
Siesta?
Earth condensed a synesta, yeah,
Oh.
which is a pretty cool word. But then the Earth would condense, right, uh, as the moon is also condensing, and since the Earth would be spinning so fast, that would allow the moon to essentially escape, right? And then
I
so
don't
that would
know.
explain why the moon is going further and further out. I think it's like 3 centimeters every year, right? That would explain why there's the similar isotopic ratios, right? But it doesn't explain the density difference. It doesn't explain why there's a discrepancy in terms of there's way less like copper, potassium, sodium, zinc, right? All that's abundant on Earth. Why wouldn't it be on the moon, right?
And if it was some big cosmic collision, why would it end up in perfect alignment?
Yeah, yeah. And
Mm.
also, like, I don't think our spin rate really works out with that, because, like, they're saying it would have had to have been spinning really fast. And, we have 24 hours in a day. We're not really spinning enough. If we got blasted by another planet, then you would
Yeah,
expect it
like I
to
said,
be
why would everything
spinning.
end up just
We'd
like
be spinning faster,
harmonious
you
and
know?
perfect and everything just ended up we tilted perfectly everything just from like a
Yeah, and
big
all those, no, the
that's like
27.32,
saying
all that.
you
And
take two Honda Civics and wreck them together and a Mercedes
you think
Benz
it'd be
pops
more.
out. Like
Yeah, yeah, and it's
what the
just
fuck, it's
perfect,
just perfect, just crash these old clunky cars
Yeah,
together and a brand new one shits out and it's in perfect form.
yeah,
Like I don't
yeah.
know about that. That seems
Oh,
why
yeah.
I don't know. That seems pretty
Okay,
out
so
there.
remember the
Are these guys on drugs? What kind of
366.
drugs are they taking? Clearly not the good kind.
Well, yeah, I don't know. It's like what we were saying is that they start with that
Uh,
assumption of like it has to be explainable by like
hmm.
mundane meat and potatoes shit. Like we're not even
But
gonna
how is that?
consider
That's
all those
not even as
crazy
from like
coincidences. You know?
almost like a basic 5-year-old sense of common sense that planets smashing into each other doesn't make sense. Like I said, smash any two things in the known universe together, and do you get perfectness after the collision? No, it's always chaos and fucking
Well, that's
obliteration.
dude. So
So
the
what the
spin
fuck?
rate
Why would
thing,
why
the
would why
spin
the
problem.
moon and the Earth suddenly be the one anomaly that if this planetary collision outcomes this flawless symphony of planet
Right.
dancing? Like
Solar
fuck that.
eclipses and all this
Yeah,
weird.
no,
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
dude,
yeah.
come on.
So the spin problem, they answer that away by
Debunked.
saying like, yeah, all right, we were spinning way faster, but then there was another impact that was in the opposite
Where are
direction,
these
and it
impacts
slowed
coming
us
from?
down.
Yeah, oh fuck that, dude. Where are these impacts coming
Oh,
from? Is someone like some cosmic kid slingshotting these planets at us? You know?
yeah, it's like billiards, I guess,
And why isn't? And
But
then here's the other thing: if that happened, then why wouldn't that be? Why haven't we seen that elsewhere in the
yeah, it's
universe?
never
You
been
know,
observed anywhere
that's
else.
of course not, or ever.
But
Yeah, like,
but they're
but
saying that this Sinesta would only exist for a couple hundred years. Like it would condense pretty quickly
wait,
and
what's
cool
the
down pretty
Sinesta
quickly.
again? Sinesta's the
The
moon.
Sinesta is the donut shape that occurs after the giant impact. So after the Earth gets vaporized,
Ugh.
it's
So wait,
in
how did the
this
Earth get vaporized if we're
donut
here
shape.
now? That doesn't make so. They're saying the Earth got vaporized, but yeah, we're on it again. There's a lot
Yeah,
of hole. There's a
it
lot of holes to this
condenses.
theory.
Well, it condenses back together. Like
What?
it gets
Oh,
vaporized and then it slowly
Jesus
cools and condenses back down
Christ.
again. And
God.
that the moon just was
Who's
created from that, but then somehow it doesn't have
who
the
pays
heavy
these
elements.
scientists, man? What are they
But
doing
it
all
also has
day?
more titanium than us. I don't know.
It's got to be
Yeah.
amphetamines, dude. Their
Here's the
labs
thing,
are
though. If
riddled with amphetamines. This
it,
seems like
that's
amphetamine
true.
theory to me, dude. They just nonsense. They're
Yeah,
climbing the walls
they're
in
just
there, just
gacked out of their
gacked out on
minds.
amphetamine. Very high grade pharmaceutical amphetamines, mind
Yeah.
you.
Yeah.
Dude, come on.
Yeah.
Like I said, like I
I know
mean,
it's
no,
pretty unlikely, but the thing is,
yes.
if
But
you
yet
look
it's
at
in a
all these
book. Somebody actually took
all
the time
these
to pen this and publish it. Like,
Yeah, it's the current. That's like the most widely accepted theory right now is this Sinesta thing. But there's no
what?
good explanation because all the weird shit with our moon because it's so weird. They don't have a good explanation. They know like the other theories are just dog shit. So it's like I don't know. This is the best we got, guys. Other
They need to
than
look at the bigger picture.
you know,
They're trying to understand too microscopic of
yeah.
things. I think if you
I don't
understand the
think that it
bigger,
being created by a super advanced, super smart alien species. I don't think that that's that crazy.
no, actually, when
We
you think
are in
about it, it
our
makes more
infancy.
sense. We're a
We are,
creative
yeah.
society ourselves. Think about it. What we do is we create shit. So why would we not figure other more intelligent or far out
Yes.
societies are
If
creating even more badass shit, such as moons?
yeah, if
If we
we
can
if we
build
become
ISS, the International Space Station, I guarantee you some other society out there has figured out how to make a fucking rock float in the sky. You know what I
yeah,
mean?
if we become a type 2 civilization and we go to like a couple solar systems over and we see a somewhat Earth-like planet, we're like, "Hey, you know what we should do? We should build them a moon
Yeah,
and see
right.
what happens.
You
We
know?
should hook them up. Hook
Yeah.
them up with the moon.
And like I said, and
But
maybe we realize it's more bizarre than that, and we get to the level like, I always think of the word creator. How throughout all of kind of ancient history, people referred to the mystery in the sky as the creator. Well, what do you do when you write a computer program? You're creating a world, an existence, and weapons. If it gets to a point where societies, or sorry, civilizations, yeah, they get to a type what the fuck ever, they literally can
hmm
program a place in the universe just like we can program a computer. You know what I mean?
yeah,
Maybe it literally becomes that
right.
at their fingertips. Like, oh, we want to generate a world, a moon, whatever. Let's throw in some stars, a sun, and maybe it gets to that level. We're making little pocket, like SimCity. For our civilization, SimCity is now on a computer screen, and it's this little rudimentary thing. Scale that up over maybe a billion years of evolution. Maybe SimCity becomes an actual thing to where you can just fucking go down your
Yeah.
tool list and pick what you want and Photoshop in this and make your planet and then download yourself into it. And hey, I built
Yeah.
myself my
That
own
sounds fun.
VR,
Sounds
right?
pretty fun.
But it's like,
Or
but my point is we're doing that now on a smaller level. Is my point. We're making
oh
VR.
yeah, yeah.
I even think about this. What we're doing now on a camera. What is a camera? It's something that captures reality so you can reproduce it and recreate it. Or like what I'm going to do with this afterward, I'm going to edit it and make it different. But our core technology has always been in altering reality in some way so we can affect it and then put it back the way we see fit. So I feel like that's like the ultimate. And same thing
Mm.
with computers. What is computer programming? It's also you have control over what you are making and creating. That's what
Yeah.
computer programming is. You want to make something to serve a need, make a tool, make a calculator, make a program for Zoom, me and you to talk to. But it's always got an intention behind it, right? And so I think everything else in the universe, you can feel that intentionality. There's some intention behind the moon. And I think that's what spooks us out. We don't know what the intention is, but
That's
there's
what it seems
clearly an
like.
intention there. And I think science always wants to dance around that because that intention implies they're not in control. And science wants to believe that,
Oh,
oh, it's a dead
that's a
universe
good
that we're
point.
investigating and we're in
Yeah,
control
we
of it.
come from
Yeah,
nothing.
we're
It's
the,
all
well, and to believe that we're the
happenstance.
sentient thing. We're the thing with the knowledge. We're the thing with the investigative hourglass, or sorry, magnifying glass, and everything else in the universe is this dead thing for us to investigate. I think science gets bugged out when it's like, oh, no, the universe is looking back. You know what I mean?
Hmm.
It's investigating you as much
Yeah.
as you're investigating it. And I think for whatever
Or it
reason, that
created
concept
us.
is just
Yeah.
unaccepted by science. Like, no, no, no. It's a thing only we investigate, and there's nothing out
Yeah,
there
it's
that could be
never.
doing that to us. But I
You're
think
not
that's the
allowed to
fallacy of
say that.
science. Yeah, I think it's
Yeah.
the grand fallacy of science is accepting that, if we can bear life and investigate the universe, why can't you assume that it has that same right back at you? It's very
And that's the
bizarre.
good point that
Yeah.
like all of our technology right now is about creation.
Yeah.
So what does our technology look like in a million
In million
years when we're
years, a
that
deeper
advanced?
level of
So you'd
creation.
make
Yeah.
and if you do need a moon for in order for a planet to have life, like it's this giant KitchenAid essentially for making that primordial
Maybe it's just the
baby batter
star
on a
on the
planet,
Christmas tree. Maybe it's an
you know?
aesthetic. Maybe it's just there to look nice and make us trip out. Maybe
It
whoever
does look nice.
maybe
I do
whoever
love me
made
the
this
moon.
computer
The
program was
moon's
like,
great.
oh man, those humans are gonna be trying to sort out this benign moon thing forever.
Dude, what if they're just fucking with us? Like,
Yeah.
oh, hey, make it 400 times
Yeah,
smaller
exactly.
than the
Just and
sun,
like I
but
said,
for
how hard
the
would it be for the
400
people to just okay,
times
yeah,
further
click, click, click,
away?
click, click, click.
So it blocks it out
Yeah.
completely, dude. It's gonna mess them up. And then think of like the ancient astronomers in like Neolithic times that figured it out and were able to predict when the moon would eclipse the
Right.
sun.
Probably
Think of the power those guys had of like, hey
they
guys,
did. They became
tomorrow
high
I'm gonna
priest.
block out the sun, dude. And then it happens the next day, and everyone would be like, oh, dude, you're the new
Yeah,
king.
you're right. Either that or they sacrificed him because they were afraid. They're like, it's a demon, cut
Well,
its head off.
yeah, I heard that like
It's a
there's a
witch.
story of these ancient Chinese astronomers that like goofed up on predicting some shit and they got their heads cut off.
Yeah, that
It
too.
was
Yeah,
like
you fuck it
it was
up.
like the Neolithic weatherman and like the
It's
price
like,
of being wrong was,
don't make predictions. Yeah, you can't
you know,
back up.
like, ah, there was supposed to be an eclipse today. I don't
Oh,
know.
I totally did. Fuck you, Roy. It's like, oh, dude, I
Yeah.
was dry. Man, I
Didn't carry
swear.
the two.
Yeah, yeah, right. It's one of those mundane
Yeah.
details. Put the
Yeah.
decimal in the
Yeah.
wrong place, right?
Yep. So some other weirdness with the moon. So I'll just go over this stuff real quick.
It's pretty weird. The whole
The
place.
depth to diameter ratio of the craters on the
Oh
moon
wait,
isn't very
hold on one second.
consistent.
You haven't
Sure.
considered this tangent though
What tangent?
about the moon. The possibility, probably the most obvious possibility of what's going on up there.
What?
It's made of cheese.
Blue cheese?
It's made of cheese, Gromit.
If
Cheese.
you were the moon and you were made of cheese, would you eat yourself?
Absolutely. That better be made of cheese, cause
How did
dude,
where did that come from? The moon being made of cheese?
cause it
Is that because
is.
it looks like it's
No, it's cause it
cheese?
actually is cheese, man.
That would be so cool if it actually was.
Just a big
That's the
hunk of
big
cheese.
secret
That's
that
the
they're
big
hiding.
secret. Because think about it, whoever makes
That's
this
why,
place gotta have some compassion. They're like, let's hook that plant up. And they probably wonder, like, why is no one eating the big cheese wheel we put up there for them? They're just
Yeah,
down there
what's wrong with
freaked out
these
by this thing.
people?
They
How have they not figured
they
this
drove
out yet?
cars on it. Like, how disrespectful. They just bounced around with
Yeah.
buggies and jammed a flag in it and left.
Like,
Like, dude, we gave you.
maybe that's why. Have you ever seen the press conference of the Apollo astronauts after they came back
Yeah,
to
they're all
Earth? They look sad, dude. They look like bummed out, man. It's weird.
the moon was.
It's super
It was
strange.
awesome.
They're like, fuck, it's cheese, you guys. What do we tell them?
Yeah, like,
What do we say?
I
We
brought
can't
back
tell
so
them
much moon cheese, and it just makes you
Yeah.
like trip out. It's like it's like
Yeah.
the best psychedelic ever. Yeah, and you just
Oh
piles.
hell
of it.
yeah, dude.
That'd be great.
Yeah.
Just like super
Oh,
cheese.
dude. Fuck yeah.
That's a theory I'm going with. It can be whatever you want,
it's
George.
cheese.
There are people that live
All right.
on this planet and they still think it's flat. They did a whole thing about
Right.
him. Remember that
No comment.
documentary? Oh yeah, you've talked to me about that before.
What, the
The
flat
flat
Earth?
earthers.
I'm not a flat earther, but
No,
I
I know
don't
that, but I'm
besmirch
just
them.
saying
If they believe the Earth's flat, like
that's all I
that's
was saying.
cool.
I wasn't getting. I don't care about the topic. I was
Yeah,
just saying that people can literally create their own world by believing
reality.
whatever the fuck they want.
Hey, if
To
if
those
most of the
people, the
people on the
world is
planet
flat.
believed that the Earth was flat, maybe it would be.
Maybe
Maybe
it
it's
would
all
be.
consensus algorithm.
I've
Back to
thought
the
about
whole
that. Maybe
simulation
if
thing, you know?
everyone on the planet believed the sky was purple, it would instantly turn purple. I've
Just
had that thought.
yeah,
Yeah.
consensus algorithm,
Yep.
dude. Algorithm. I
But we,
said that
we
word.
all expect it to be blue, and therefore it is.
Yeah.
Ay, ay,
Did I
ay.
finish that sentence about the craters? I don't know if I
Oh,
did.
they're cheese.
So
Sorry, I
the
cut you
the
off
cra-
about the
the
cheese.
the craters, like the big craters on the moon,
Hmm.
aren't as deep as they should be. So, um, if it's however many miles wide, you would expect it to be deep. Like you'd expect that ratio, right? But that's not really what we see. We see that no matter how wide a crater is, it kind of has about the same depth, give or take. So that kind of backs up the whole moon being a structure that's hollow, Like what if it just has this shell, a titanium shell, so like when something smacks it, it can't penetrate
Hmm.
all that deep, But they explain it away as like, oh, there's magma underneath, so like, an asteroid smacks it and then the bottom of the crater just fills up with magma. All right, that's the
But
official explanation for
but
it.
the thing is, it's funny. It's kind of like the God debate, or or anything else, since nobody's actually, you know, tangibly gotten the result. All of it is, theory. You know what I mean?
Yeah, yeah.
All of it. But what's
It's all
interesting is that
conjecture.
it's never
It's weird
presented
we haven't
as
gone back. We went to
yeah.
the moon
They don't have money
six
for it
years ago
anymore,
or
dude.
some shit. Like, why don't
Yeah.
we go back? That's strange. I do believe that we went to the moon. I haven't really looked that much into it about the moon landing being a hoax.
Oh
But
yeah. Some people
like,
think the whole space program's a hoax. For reals.
well,
Some
I
people think
mean,
there's like no such
that's
thing
a
as space.
pretty good piece of circumstantial evidence that, like, yeah, why the fuck haven't we gone back? Like, you'd think building a moon base would be huge. That would be a big thing. It'd be like your stepping stone to, going to Mars or whatever. You
Maybe
build a base
this.
there, you can refuel. It'd be cheaper to launch rockets from the moon because there's way less gravity. So why haven't we gone
Maybe
back,
this.
I
Maybe that
don't know.
sad look on the
Kind of weird.
astronauts' faces was there is no outer space. They just left the set and they got like told like you can't
Yeah,
tell
I've seen
everyone to go
that.
back. You guys they came out of the set
Seen
for a
that, yeah.
minute and they took them out and they're like, yeah, there's nothing out here. There's
Like,
no
yeah, you got
moon.
to lie about
Yeah,
this.
yeah, exactly. And they're just
Stanley
like, yeah,
Kubrick's,
maybe that's why they're just so warped. They're like,
yeah.
you need to go back and tell people you're on a moon and whatever. But in reality, they're
And
just
they're
in
like,
they're
shit.
in some cosmic waiting room, just getting fucked with. Just like, hey, yeah, we yanked you out of the simulation for this, but yeah, there's
Yeah.
nowhere.
Or
There's no
maybe,
out here.
or maybe they found some weird shit on the moon.
Or maybe just
Maybe
that.
there's giant man-eating bugs
Or
or
maybe it just got like
space
weird
bugs
in
or
another way.
something.
Maybe it got like broke back rocket ship and they all cuddled one night and it got
Oh
awkward.
yeah, it
And
got
it just
lonely,
was
and then
something
they came
like
back
that.
and
It
were
was
like,
just it was
oh.
just something super dumb like that. There was just some drama, some man drama, like Buzz sucked Neil
Yeah.
off and whatever.
Hell yeah, dude. I hope that's what happened.
Yeah, it was just some weird shit like
It's
that. They're all
awkward.
traumatized by it. They're just like, oh man,
Yeah.
he wanted to see what it would be like to shoot a load in space.
Yeah.
Oh.
God. Let's go with that. I think that's a
Human
better.
nature, man. You can't you
That's a
can't
good
take the can't
explanation.
take the monkey out of the
Yeah,
monkey,
yeah,
right?
yeah, yeah. Well,
Oh
that's all
man,
I got about the moon.
that's all you got about the moon, huh? Well,
What do you
yeah,
think?
we
Natural?
what's
You think
that?
it's created, or do you think it's natural?
I mean,
I feel like it's created. This
I,
kind of convinced me. I haven't really, the fact that there's not a good theory on how it was formed and all those weird number coincidences. I'm leaning towards
well, I mean, I guess for me, yeah,
artificial structure.
I think it just goes into a bit much bigger understanding of, I guess to understand the moon, you have to understand what is containing all of this planets, moon, people, otherwise. And I think, you can use something like the moon's mystery, I guess, to prod your way into like that much grander, I guess, mystery, if that makes sense, right? because I think
Mm-hmm.
I think it's like a fractal. Everything is represented in its small parts. So our tango with understanding the moon, I think, is really translates up to us just understanding the nature of all of reality, right? Because I think to solve one is to almost solve the other in that sense, because I think they're interloping in that way. I think the moon's mystery is just as fundamental as our mystery of everything fucking else,
Yeah, it's a
you
piece
know?
to that puzzle,
Right.
and eventually, hopefully, we put it all together.
Right. And
Yeah.
I think that's the thing is science kind of always
Yeah.
goes at these things very compartmentalized. Like, let's just
Oh,
understand the
absolutely.
moon, and what's on the moon by its
Hmm.
elements and its math and all. And that's all well and good. And those are all clues. But I think with leaving out the humility to the grander scheme that it fits in, it's like you're doomed to only understand just a sliver of it.
Yeah. Well said.
Yeah.
Well said.
Yeah.
You want to leave it there?
Yeah,
Wrap
that's
it up?
been a good with the outer space sounds and the moon talk,
Yeah.
that was a good
Radio
radio
astronomy and the
astronomy.
moon.
Yeah, it all fits together pretty
Episode
good.
4?
Yes, I do believe this is episode 4.
We
So
did it, dude.
we did
Good
it.
job.
Yeah.
Hell yeah.
I guess next week we can pick up. I had that other kind of topic I wanted to come back to where we started off of just kind of the existential dread, maybe.
Oh.
But I
Yeah,
guess
we should do something spooky
yeah, that's
for
what I'm saying for
Halloween.
Halloween. That's what I'm saying.
Oh, okay.
Okay, here it is. This is what I actually do want to do, and this would be a perfect time of year to do it. And
Yeah.
Ram Dass, right? Ram Dass, the beautiful man.
Uh-huh.
His whole thing
Yeah,
was
the guru.
yeah. Well, he was about death counseling. So anyway, I want to do an episode on death and basically and
Oh,
why it's
yeah.
feared. Like because I
Spooky.
think it shouldn't be feared, and I think death can actually be
Okay.
flipped, and it can be, as Ram Dass puts it, instead of running from death, it can be a process of walking each other home, right?
Oh,
Yeah.
yeah,
And
that's
so
sad.
anyway, I would like to tackle that one on the next one and just kind of confront the taboo why death always has to be morbid and scary and sad and lostful versus, a celebration of just the change of form, one form to another, the caterpillar into the
Oh yeah,
butterfly.
dude. Okay, I can dig it.
So good stuff.